Members, it's about to make a start. We have formed the quorum. I now call the meeting to order. Item number 1, election of vice chair. We are filling the vacancy of the vice chair. The secretary has issued a notice that the vice chair will be re-elected. We have one candidate being nominated, Mr. Tan Yueheng, nominated by Mr. Martin Liao and Mr. Li. Mr. Tam is not chairman of or vice chair of this committee, nor is he the chair or vice chair of any consultative body or advisory body appointed by the government. So in accordance with the rules of procedure, I declare that Mr. Tan elected as vice chair of the Commerce and Industry panel. Congratulations. Item 2, papers issued since the last meeting. There have been 4 papers issued, and they have been included in the agenda for members' reference. Item number 3, date of next meeting and items for discussion. Please note that we have 2 slots for, or 2 more regular meetings in November and December. The November meeting is scheduled for the 7th of November, on Monday, between 4:30 and 6 p.m. We'll be hearing a briefing by the SED as the SCMA and also SITI. The December meeting will be scheduled for the 20th of December, Tuesday at 2:30 p.m. The administration proposes 2 items. A, progress on the Hong Kong-Shenzhen Innovation and Technology Park, and B, convention exhibition industry in Hong Kong. Any comments on those 2 items, members? If not, moving on to the next item, progress report on research and development centers. I'd like to invite the administration in, and members who wish to speak, please press the button right now. With us for this item are Professor Sun Dong, Secretary for Innovation, Technology and Industry, Ms. Rebecca Poon, Innovation and Technology Commissioner, Mrs. Eleanor Chan, Assistant Commissioner, and their team. We're going to have discussion on this item till 3:55. I'll hand you over to Professor Sun. Chairman, members, the government has been developing a vibrant innovation and technology ecosystem, and we have been developing the I&T development and the upstream and downstream development, and also the development of Hong Kong into a smart city, and collaboration with the mainland, integration with the mainland. The 4 R&D centers are important partners for Hong Kong, and the 4 of the R&D centers have been working together with the industry and the academia to commercialize the R&D outcomes. In terms of the midstream and downstream development, we are promoting development in 2021-22. The 5 centers have launched 160 projects, and 360 projects are going on at the moment, and the industry is really cooperating with the centers, and they've achieved the level of 30%, and with an income of $270 million. And there are a number of projects that have been commercialized to the tune of $94 million. In terms of nurturing and attracting talents, these centers have been doing a lot. We have a number of projects. In 21-22, for the 5 R&D centers, they have recruited 370 personnel to be involved in the R&D work. And the centers also have internship program, and the INT students have been invited as interns for them to understand the ecosystem, INT ecosystem, and to make preparation for Hong Kong to absorb new talents. In 21-22, they have launched 25 projects that in cooperation with the government departments, where we are trying to enhance the efficiency, like with cooperating with the police to provide the speech-to-text engine, and we also have the Geron Tech, and to facilitate all the search and classification work. And we've also enhanced the quality of the care. The centers are also cooperating with various organizations to take forward the R&D, and also to develop the commercialization of the R&D outcomes. In the past financial year, and all the operation details have been set out in the paper, and they've also had some short videos to introduce their work and also the way forward. The chief executives of the centers will be only delighted to answer members' questions. Thank you very much, Professor. There are 8 members. We have a video for members. APES have been developing the vehicle technology, and we have gained the international local recognition. In the Geneva, we have got the award of 1 gold and 1 bronze. An international award. We also have the demonstration award. APES have introduced the low platform minibus that has been converted into a vaccination center. Together with the CUHK Medical Center, we have introduced this e-minibus. This is equipped with the negative pressure facilities, and this is being deployed to various districts and schools and care homes. The e-bus has been handed over to the airport and the Anti-Cancer Society. During the heat of summer, these buses provide really the cool comfort for the visitors. APEX also work together with the Polytechnic University. We have the ammonium electric vehicle. The APES has been working together with the mainland organizations, and we have been trying to integrate with the GPA. SJ covers 4 different divisions. We have started the vehicle to everything system. We have entered into the second phase. We have included the vehicles, and also the vehicle to everything interface. We are developing technology together with Shenzhen. We have the 3D circuit system and the 5G system. And in this December 2021, we have received the first class prize from the mainland. and we managed to save 20% of the energy consumption. The EMSD headquarters is also equipped with a conference room with the latest technology provided by the SG. We also have the CBDC and ESG digitalization. And with the increase in demand for IoT, the SG is conducting commercialization of the R&D outcomes. We have entered into collaboration agreement with the institutions to commercialize the R&D outcomes. And together with the Shenzhen Southern University of Technology, we are broadening the division. SG has been receiving a lot of awards over the years. Hong Kong Retail works in collaboration with the industry. We're also working with the trade to develop the latest solution and to deepen the applicability. The retail has been enhancing the competitiveness to benefit society. We have FDL Agnes, which is the only one which is in compliance with the textile industry as an instrument. Green machine heat equipment can recycle the materials. This has been upgraded to industrial scale, and we have entered into an agreement with the garment factory. G2G garment recycling system is the latest system which is available in Hong Kong and Europe. There are two sets in this regard. We also have the high-grade athletes' garment that they can enhance the performance of the athletes. Hong Kong Retail also work together with the welfare organizations for them to use the latest technology. Retail's technology ties in with social development and create a new recyclable industry and seize the mainland opportunity. The efforts of retail has won a lot of accolades from locally and also overseas. LSCM has been working hard to develop the INT ecosystem in Hong Kong. We are supporting the tertiary institutions and small and medium-sized enterprises to develop technology. The INT covers sea, land, air facilities, the port, the airport, and also cross-boundary land logistics. LSCM works hard to develop a smart city. We have the GPS sensing system. We have also the GPS monitoring system. The LSCM is also developing the smart mobility system, like the system that can address the traffic congestion and localized traffic problems. The IoT robotic system was completed in Hong Kong, and this is promoting the digitalization of the construction industry. The LSCM technology has been benefiting the elderly and also the disadvantaged. We stand ready to work hard to battle the pandemic. We are working hard with the innovation team for the benefit of Hong Kong. This is LSCM. NAMI has a top-notch team to develop the latest nanotechnology materials, and we have been winning a lot of awards. We have the nano fiber that can be germ repellent. We are producing this nano masks for the members of the public. We have 6 enterprises developing the medical supplies, the plastic bottles and baby products. Together with CIC and the Highways Department, we are developing the infill materials, they can be used on construction sites. And we have the cement materials, and we are helping with the development of the accommodation for the elderly. We developed this doll series that are available around the world. We have developed the cellar warm, extra warm, ultra winter outfits, and we also have the latest generation of lithium battery, which is available for use in the e-vehicles.
那汇报结束，谢谢。
This ends my presentation. Thank you. Thank you, Secretary. Well, let me read out the names of the members who would like to speak. Mr. Lau Kwok Fan, Mr. Jim Ng, Mr. Sunny Tan, Mr. Ma Fong Kwok, Dr. Chao Meng Kwong, Dr. Kennedy Wong, Dr. Tan Yue Heng, Dr. Wendy Hong, Mr. Edward Leung, and Ms. Yong Ho Yan. 4 minutes each, including both question and answer. Mr. Lau Kwok Fan, please. Thank you. A warm welcome to Professor Sun. I'd like to ask about the 5 R&D centers, and these were all set before the Secretary joined the administration. So are you satisfied with the 5 R&Ds, and do they satisfy your standards? The industry income reaches around 2.7 billion, and commercialization is around 94 million. Well, compared to the year before, it's a huge improvement, which is around 20% to 50% increase. Looking at the expenditure, it's around 490 million. So it is still a loss. Have you estimated when the income from these 5 R&Ds would become profitable? I see from the paper that the government is looking into transferring the technology to the industry and to commercialize the products. And so and that the standard be raised from 30% to 35%. Are there any other measures to meet these standards? Thank you for your 3 questions. Well, I have actually visited the 5 R&D centers quite a few times since I came on board. I have talked to the employees and the management, and I'm very satisfied with their performance. Well, you talked about the commercialization reaching 94 million, which is about a 59% from the previous year. Our investment, of course, is much larger than that. We look at a percentage on the investment together with the expenditure. The previous year, we were able to go beyond 30%. In the upcoming years, we're also going to enhance the standard to reach 35% or above. On self-finance issues, we hope to improve the 5 R&Ds and then to gradually raise the investments from both the government and the centers. These are actually currently supported by the government. We emphasize the functions it has on the community. So we are going to encourage investment in the R&D and also to look into the GDP brought along by these performances. The last time we looked at the performance was 2020, and investment was only less than 1 billion, but then it was able to reach a GDP of around 4%. we hope this could become a KPI. So on one hand, we want to encourage more investment, and also on the other hand, we would look into the positioning and also the job opportunities. There are a few thousand job opportunities at the moment. In the past few years, the 5 R&D centers have also brought along huge achievements, which was shown on the video just now. Mr. Jimmy Ng. Thank you. Actually, my question is similar to that of Mr. Lau Kok Fan. I see from the paper that in the past 4 years, investment was about 2.7 billion, but then the income was only around 1/3 of that. And there's actually a commercialization research of working with Shenzhen. It seems that a performance from Hong Kong has not been high. How are you going to ensure that the R&D center could become an intermediary? Would you also draw reference from success cases on the mainland to boost the commercialization of research? It seems that the target level is to be raised to 35%. From 2021 to 2022, the R&D centers actually exceeded the target level of 35%, which is commendable. But with the economic boost, how are you going to ensure more commercialization of such research? Secretary, thank you. So the number you've given, about 1/10, is correct for commercialization. We also need investment and work from the industry. When we talk about commercialization, we hope that products can be commercialized, but it cannot be over-commercialized because it also has to meet the functions needed. Because sometimes we should give up the patents after it becomes successful to ensure that there would be too much competition. We encourage commercialization, but we also want to control the range of commercialization. We hope in the next few years, the 5 R&D centers could help us to provide with more opportunities. The target level set at 30% has already been met, but we are not only talking about 30% per year. We're talking about the average target level throughout a few years, because you may not meet this level every single year, as there is a cyclical stage. But not one company has stopped at the level of 30%. They're all going beyond the target level of 30%. Next, Mr. Sunny Tan. Thank you, Chairman. I first declare that I'm the chair of the Productivity Council, and so also I'm in charge of APAS, the Automated Platforms and Application Systems R&D Center. On the topic of commercialization, it's more of a concept becoming a product. But when the product really becomes commercialized, so from 0 to 1, 1 to 100, sometimes it might really not be successful after it has been put on trial. So how can we better ensure that products can really be commercialized? And I really must commend the government for their efforts in pushing forward the development of the R&Ds. The government provides support to R&D centers, but I'm sure it's mainly limited to investment locally. We need to make sure it can extend to the GBA. We should review how we can better integrate into the Greater Bay Area. Other than integrating our talents with the GBA, we also want mainland talents to work with us. And we need to ensure that we have a map for this going forward. Secretary, thank you. Thank you for your question. I agree with your view on commercialization. In the last few years, due to the pandemic, we did not really touch on the topic of commercialization. But now we are looking into upstream development. One of our main goals is to encourage commercialization. The 5 R&D centers, as centers supported by the Hong Kong government, have large responsibilities to work together with the sector to carry out commercialization. And we are currently in discussion. Be rest assured, next year or the year after, I'm sure I'll be able to give you a very good report. The R&D centers have been placing importance in working with mainland institutions, and they're working with people from the sector who not only come from Hong Kong but also from the mainland. The centers are working on 4 main projects through APAS on e-buses and also to work together in research on automotive parts. And an MOU has been signed with the Southern University of Shenzhen to look into the research on semiconductors. And the Hong Kong STU is also working together with Nansha, and PolyU is working also with mainland on different research on some driving technology so that it could be done in a cross-boundary manner. And many online forums are to be held to discuss further collaboration. And we hope that we will be able to deepen our collaboration with the reopening of our borders. Mr. Ma Fong Kok. Thank you, Chairman. We've seen successes in the 5 R&D centers. Looking forward, are these enough to work with the development we need? For example, how can we have a better collaboration between Hong Kong and Shenzhen? And on biotechnology, we have been touching on issues that arose from COVID. How are we going to work together on that? The government also raised the issue of developing art development. Well, it might not necessarily be part of this bureau, but arts should also be covered. So I want to know whether there is a need to enhance or to set up new centers other than the current 5 to ensure we'll be able to implement future development. Secretary, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Ma, for your very good question. Actually, on the 5 R&D centers. We've been discussing with them on their future positioning, where they need to have a very specific positioning. For example, for APAS, it has positioned itself to be an automotive center with expertise with auto driving and other new technology. And I do not rule out the possibility of new automotive projects in the upcoming future with APAS. And of course, they are going to work furthermore with the tertiary institutions. They must come up with new projects such as on semiconductors. Other centers are also positioning themselves. I'm not going to list them out one by one.
科技等等啊。
When you refer to the biotech, the commissioner is really aware of that. We have the Center, Hong Kong centers, and also we have the Life, Health, and at the Loop area, we're going to have the R&D centers there. Art tech and also is part of the equation. Thank you very much for your suggestion. We very much hope that we're going to be working together with the new Culture Bureau to work out the solution. And we're also looking at the film production, and I look forward to further views from Mr. Ma. Chairman, if I may follow up, this is a new area. We have the 5 R&D centers. Now, if they don't belong to commerce and industry, will the ISIS be moved back to the CSTB? And this cuts across different bureaus, and I think there has to be a lot of complementarity. I'm not sure how much flexibility there is for these centers to complement and supplement one another, in particular to work together with the mainland counterparts. But when it comes to the art tech, many universities have been approaching the ITF for funding, and will be making an announcement on a really large-scale cooperation project to be launched. So the Innovation and Technology Fund covers the R&D in universities, and we also have the support scheme that would cover this particular area. We are all in support of the development of our tech. We will work hard on this. Mr. Chairman Kwong. Chairman, thank you. Secretary. We have 5 R&D centers in the INT ecosystem. We have seen a lot of achievements in their R&D outcomes. We have to compare ourselves with the mainland and other parts of the world, and we are lagging really far behind still. And the income from commercialization is still on the low side. A lot of the R&D projects have to do with the upstream exploration, and it is a real long way away from the actual commercialization of the outcomes. So can we have better cooperation between the government, industry, academia, and the research sectors? Will you be transferring some of the roles to the tertiary institutions so that the R&D centers would devote more attention to the commercialization? Now, the R&D can be taken up more by the academia, whereas the commercialization can be taken up more by the R&D centers. And there would be greater incentives for the tertiary institutions to work harder and to undergo transformation and work together with the GPA. And there is another element which is important in the universities. If they have to do more R&D and commercialization, I think that there should be a relaxation of the rules, and we have to consider how we can share the copyright. If they're merely producing dissertation without really having to deal with the applicability, then it's not really good enough. And we do have a lot of top-notch experts in Hong Kong. My second question is, we have 5 R&D centers other than the SG. They have been around for a decade or more. And over the past decade, the innovation and technology have seen really revolutionary changes. So in these R&D centers, this is a platform to collaborate with the industry and the academia. Would there be any review? Will you be considering the frontier technology that would be suited to Hong Kong, textile and garment and so on? Can we have a new positioning of these centers and upgrade them? And can we set up some applied research centers? Now, in terms of talents, it is hard to recruit the right talents in the mainland. There are so many, such a big pool of talents. I'm wondering whether we can hire more talents to help Hong Kong, or to help the commercial and industrial sector to promote and market the commercialized products in order to enhance the whole benefits. A couple of questions there, Secretary. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you very much, Mr. Chow, for the questions. On the first question, my understanding is how can the 5 R&D centers have a division of labor with the universities? That the 5 R&D centers are conducting less of the basic R&D, and they will be working with the universities to transfer the R&D outcomes. And we do encourage the R&D centers to collaborate with the universities, and in their respective specialized areas, they should have more development. And the 5 centers do have their own positioning. Like SJ, it is clear that they are collaborating closely with the universities to commercialize the R&D outcomes. Other than the SJ, since 2006, these centers have been set up, and should there be a review, and certainly we would conduct a review to make sure that they are going from strength to strength, and they have to fulfill their own mission to make sure that they can unleash the best potential. We don't have any plan to combine or to remove any one of them. And I think we have to quicken our pace of our I&T development. We're not devoting enough resources, and not only do we have to keep the 5 centers, if anything, we really want to have new R&D centers going forward. On the third question, recruitment of talent, it is indeed difficult, and the 5 centers are supported by the government, and we do need to recruit the talents and to broaden our market. They have recruited 1,000 people. So other than the social benefits and economic benefits, we also have to look at the amount of talents to be recruited, and what opportunities will be available for young people in Hong Kong. Secretary, you've been working in university for quite some considerable time. Tomorrow, the chief executive will be delivering the policy address, and there will certainly be talk of how we can grab the talents and how we can keep the talents. Now, you've been working with the R&D centers as to how they can hire the right talents. Do you think that there is a need to revamp the recruitment system? You said that SG is cooperating with the Southern University of Science and Technology. I must declare that I have a joint company with that university. Now, that university allows the professors and lecturers to hold shares or hold stakes if they form company to commercialize the R&D outcomes. They're allowed to take some stakes. So will the university. So with regard to these R&D centers, will the staff members be on a fixed pay? Will you be considering these innovative ideas? And also, it is clear that we are integrating into the development of the mainland. That commands priority. Now, we also have the ASEAN 10 countries, and they are the second largest partner in terms of import and export. Will we allow these R&D centers to cooperate with the ASEAN countries so for them to get more business from the business? Secretary. Right. These questions are related to the centers. First, about the commercialization of the R&D outcomes. I'm sure which one would like to take the question. Thank you very much. In our system, take our center, for instance, we do have various ways to incentivize our colleagues. Although we're not taking any stakes or any shareholdings, we would encourage people to undergo further education, which is paid for, and we also look at the performance of the staff members. We also have the performance-related allowance. If resources permit, we would allow them to have a good enough working environment, like the medical insurance package, which is higher than the norm. We are attracting overseas talents. In the first year, we would try to help them identify accommodation. Now, we do have a different system here in Hong Kong. In the mainland, they have plenty of opportunities to start their own business, and there are so many different ways to do so. Whereas in Hong Kong, if you allow people to take shareholdings, it would be easier for people to have their own startups, which we do encourage. But not every single one will get this kind of incentive. We certainly would like to incentivize every single one of our staff members. ASEAN, right? Thank you, Chairman. Right, as to how we can market our R&D outcomes to other parts of the world, and this remains our objective. As we said in the last paragraph, we have the Innovation Hub at Hong Kong website, together with the Hong Kong PC and the universities. If they're ready for the commercialization, we would put this on this platform, and this will be given sufficient publicity for the institutions and enterprises in Hong Kong. We have referred these to the ETOs for them to do the marketing in the respective areas, and also the ETOs in the mainland. Now, the R&D centers and the universities would be marketing their own R&D outcomes, because we'd like to see them commercialized on the ground to become more available commercially.
On the second question, I totally agree with Dr. Wong. We need to go out. We not only have to go to Europe and United States now, we can also choose to further develop in ASEAN. Therefore, we are going to support the R&Ds to enhance their expertise. Actually, many of them have businesses in Asia and in ASEAN countries. As for intellectual property, the 5 R&D centers are different from universities. We encourage researchers to conduct research in R&D in universities, but then for the R&D centers, they are only going to help enhance competitiveness in Hong Kong. So they must be cautious. However, at this moment, I believe that the R&D centers have been balancing this in a fine manner, and we have seen many successful cases. Thank you. Dr. Tan Yueheng. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Secretary. I'd like to follow up on what Mr. Ma Fong Kwok mentioned just now. On the definition of the 5 R&D centers, well, this is the 16th year since the establishment of the R&D centers in 2006. We've seen the video clips, and you have also presented on the progress report on R&D centers. But is there anything still lacking in the R&D centers? Can they actually assimilate to the current situation? In the next few years, would there be an adjustment made to the structure of the centers? So the number of employees at the R&D centers is 1,087. So 710 of them are professionals, and some of them are not. In order to meet the needs of the centers, what kind of talents are you looking for? So currently, the ratio of non-professionals to professionals is 370 to 717. So 310 of them would actually be at the front lines, 700 of them in the back end. Would there be adjustments made in the future? Thank you for your question. I would like to first respond to the issue of talents. So when we talk about the 300 people in the talent base in Hong Kong, we're talking about the program of a research talent hub. So only graduates who can fulfill certain requirements can be part of this talent pool, and around 370 of them meet such requirements. I'm sure that the 1,000 odd people working at the R&D centers are all in the field of innovation and technology. The turnover is quite large. Many people work for a few years and then they leave. The numbers I've given are the present numbers. Back to your first question on whether the mechanism of the R&D centers need to be adjusted. This is a very good question. From 2006 till a few years back, there has been 10 odd years when Hong Kong has seen huge development in high tech. In the past few years, well, after all these up and downs, people in Hong Kong realized the importance of technology, and so people are working even harder in this field. And so there is a need to set up more IT, and that is the reason why our bureau is called the Bureau for Innovation, Technology and Industry. Now, this is not easy for the R&D centers to maintain the number of talents, because they need to find ways to support themselves other than the funding we provide. We hope the 5 R&D centers could find their own positioning. I can give you an example. For the Logistics and Supply Chain Multi-Tech R&D Center, the LSCM, they're actually very low profile. During COVID-19, we provided wristband to COVID patients. There were only 7 days available for the center to come up with the development of the wristband. 7 days is totally not enough even for discussions to be made. But within 7 days, the LSCM was able to come up with a wristband, and they visited patients and went to the airport to help with the putting on the wristband. We're now in the 3rd generation of wristband. You can see how well these centers have been developing with the support of the government. There are still 7 members waiting to speak, so please use your time wisely. Next, Dr. Wendy Hong. Secretary, I have 3 suggestions. Well, members are quite concerned with the performance of the R&D centers. How do the centers select the content of research, or is it actually demand-oriented R&D? So does the sector work together with the R&D center to come up with some research that is necessary, because that can actually enhance the efficiency of commercialization? Secondly, whether it be setting up a smart city or trying to enhance our IT, we do need a large pool of talents. So how can we really match the business sectors or the industry together with the R&D centers so that we can better collaborate? And thirdly, R&D centers are supported by the government, and so the social values are more important than the economic values. So can these centers become the base for STEM education to allow secondary students to learn not only from textbooks, instead to visit these R&D centers to learn firsthand, and also to come up with in-house scientist program so that we could really step up STEM education in Hong Kong? 3 questions. I would like to defer these questions to Rebecca and to my colleagues. I'll give a general response first. In terms of commercialization, as the centers need to apply to the ITF, as set out in our paper, these need to be supported by the sector, and at least 10% of them need to be through the platform and 30% from the sector. So if the sector is enough support from the sector, then the supporter has the right to the patents. Only by doing that would the industry and the sector be willing to fund research. And we believe we must adopt this method. Secondly, on the public sector trial scheme, we are encouraging the government departments to try out the research results of the PSTS. Otherwise, they would not be first-hand users and not be able to give concrete feedback on the products. So the R&D centers have been working very hard with the departments to promote the PSTS, because only by trying out can we encourage the use and adoption of the research results. Thirdly, the R&D centers would participate in our internship program to encourage more students to be interested in IT development. I'm not sure if there's enough time for the others to address the question. Let me supplement. We work mainly on R&D. The sector needs to support 10%, some even 30% for IP, 51%. So we would only begin our application once they have confirmed their needs. And in the paper, we see that for taking the police has said that it's very hard work to take statements, and so we have also helped them with technology to help them transfer the statements from hard to software. And we are also working with the VTC professors on how to work on 5G sector. Okay, so that was Dr. Dennis Yip. I'd like to remind everyone to either use Chinese or only English in your address. Mr. Edward Leung, thank you. We cannot only rely on the ITIB, because by 2030 there will not be any of the current vehicles in use, because by that time we should all transfer to e-vehicles. But then if we are going to do that, we would need 20 times the electric stations. But then we see that there are huge difficulties in doing that, because for a public housing estate, they do not have the available cables to set up these base stations. And so this is not only one sole case. I'm sure that it's the same over many estates. By 2030, we would realize that we do not have enough electric charging stations, and by then we will need to extend our deadline by 10 years, because we do not have the adequate charging stations to support this change. Would the government set up a subcommittee to help everyone meet the 2030 target? Lawrence, please. Thank you. Promoting the wider use of electric vehicles is something we are all working to support, including helping SMEs to provide installations. And we have also come up with views 2 research reports have been drawn up, and we have also given views to the government on the installation of charging stations. We're also supporting the government in the pilot scheme on e-mini buses. We have provided views to the government on these. We understand that in private housing estates, there are difficulties in installing charging stations, such as the issue on cables and insufficient voltage. There is a e-distribution system that if there is not enough voltage, then it can be distributed to certain parking spots for charging. We are also trying to use robots to help charge as well. So these are some of the innovations that we are trying to come up with. Many parking space owners do not allow or do not want such electric cables or charging stations in their spot, and so we are trying our best to provide assistance.
And supplement, Professor? No? There was Dr. Lawrence Zheng. I think coordination is very important. Ms. Eunice Zhong, please. Chairman, we have 5 R&D centers. I'm fully supportive of them. And they've sought funding from Let's Go, and they have so much to show for the hard work. And I think Hong Kong is moving towards a smart city. I've noticed some numbers. Now for S3, I noticed that commercialization and other income, 330% up on last year. Now for other R&D centers, they're not doing as well as S3. Now, what sort of good experience can you share with us on the part of S3? And I think that would be an example for other R&D centers, although they are working very hard as well. Now, since you have produced such impressive numbers, can you share with us some of your experience there? Second, about the new projects. Now, for the RITA, Hong Kong, they have seen a reduction of 70%, and also logistics and supply chain center, they have seen a reduction of 70%. In these 2 years, what difficulties did you encounter? Why is it that you have seen a reduction in the number of new projects? So much for now. Professor? I defer to the 2 professors to answer the question, and the other CEO also. Thank you very much for your question. In terms of commercialization and other income, we have seen an increase of 330%. The main reason is that we have stepped up our communication with the industry. We very much hope that, having understood the needs of the industry, we will be able to take forward our R&D projects, that there is a process there. Over the past 2 months, we have put together a franchise arrangement with the universities. We have been around for 2 decades. We have a lot of the background franchises or the patents. If we can commercialize the patented work, then we should be able to do a better job, and we will work harder going forward. in the course of commercialization, we'd like to bring the universities along with us. Mr. Yu or Mr. Wong? Mr. K, Mr. Edwin K. Chairman, thank you. For the garment and textile industry, we were taking a hit, and in particular, a lot of the products are exported to the European and US market. And because of the geopolitical tension, we have seen a reduction in their productivity. So they have changed the direction of their R&D, and as you can see, this year we're going to be doing a lot of catching up. Our partners are either in the EU or in the mainland. It is difficult for us to be on the ground, so some of the R&D projects have been delayed. So in the coming 2 years, we will be doing a lot of catching up. Chairman, thank you. In Schedule 2, the income from the industry and from commercialization, we maintain at the same level. It is $30 million and $20 million respectively. We are going to see a steady increase. And table 4, reduction of 74%. I think there is some misunderstanding there. This is about the collaboration with the industry. Indeed, we have seen a reduction from 4 to 1, and there is a bit of a time lag there. Last year, we didn't do that many work in the public domain, and we've done 20, and 4 were the public participation, public sector trial scheme, and we don't charge for that kind of work. So this is a fluctuation between years. And that was Mr. Wong Kwang Young, Mr. Simon Wong, Dr. Martin Liao. Chairman, thank you. President Xi, during his visit to Hong Kong on July 1st, visited the innovation and technology centers, and the country is pinning through a high hope on INT in Hong Kong. The 5 R&D centers have been spearheading the technology collaboration with the industry, academia, and others, and their work is or should be acknowledged. I've got 2 questions. Now, the first one is about the target level of industry income will be increased from 30% to 35%. At the last meeting, I raised a similar question. So I subscribe to this idea. But according to the paper in 21-22, for the 5 R&D centers, they managed to achieve a target of 40%. Now, with this proposed adjustment, is it going to be on the conservative side? So can you tell us the rationale for the 35% that you propose to increase to? Second, about the R&D centers and their cooperation with the GPA. This is restricted at the exchange and another level. Will you be deepening the collaboration level? Will you consider setting up the subsidiaries of the R&D centers in the GPA in order to enhance the complementarity with the mainland organizations, and also to promote a better commercialization of the R&D outcomes? Professor, I defer to my colleague. Yes, thank you very much for the question. Para 11, we have made it clear that we will have better income from the industry. We are proposing that this be set at 35%. Is it really conservative? I wish that it could be 40%, but we've discussed with the CEOs over the years. Indeed, we have seen huge economic changes. In order to assist the industry and also in order to devote more resources to the development of a smart city, we'd like to observe the economic development in the coming year first. But I can assure members that even though we are setting the target at 35%, as you can see, according to the numbers here in the paper, just because it is 35%, that they will not be just sticking to 35%, because we're encouraging the centers to publicize the R&D outcomes as much as possible and to open up more markets. The universities are doing the fundamental R&D, and the centers are doing the applied research and commercialize their R&D outcomes. We very much hope that when we come back next year about the 2023 report, they will be able to achieve more than 35% in this area. I'm full of confidence in them on that. The other point is members do have a point in terms of collaboration with the GPA. As indicated in the report, a lot of the R&D centers are already moving in this direction. As to whether they will be setting up any subsidiaries, we keep our options open. We do not restrict the practice of allocating some resources for this purpose. But of course, these centers will have to have regard to their own capabilities in Hong Kong, and also how collaboration with the mainland can supplement their work. But we do subscribe to the idea that they should develop in this direction. Under the ITF, since we have close ties with the mainland, we allow 50% of the R&D work to be taking place in the mainland. So we do have a lot of flexibility in this regard. Mr. Hon Chau, please. Chairman, thank you. My observation from the paper is that for these 5 R&D centers, they have really achieved pretty impressive results. They do have a lot to show for it, and a lot of us raised the point that since we have all these R&D outcomes, which are really hard to come by, we should commercialize in some way the R&D outcomes. I've got some ideas here. If you look at the numbers, for these 5 R&D centers, the income from the industry is about $270 million. And they have gone well over 30%. It is more like 40% now. The industry is very much market-oriented. If they are not doing this well, they will not be able to get the income from the industry. I'm sure they will be able to do it. But in the days to come, the income from the industry is, of course, one target. But how can we measure the commercialization of the R&D outcomes? Perhaps we can devote more resources to the marketing. They've done so much, and perhaps you need to give them a bit of a plug more. Many people don't have any ideas about the capabilities on our part, and we've seen a lot of amazing products from the HKPC, and I've always been telling them that they should market the products. Now, we do have the achievements here, and I don't think we should let them go to waste. Perhaps you should identify 1 or 2 really attractive projects and give them more publicity in Hong Kong. I'm sure that will enhance people's confidence in reindustrialization. If you bring the public on board, it is far easier for you to move down this path.
Secretary, thank you, Mr. Chao, for your valuable comments. We have taken this down and will discuss this when back to our office. We also need to look at other indicators on the economic benefits that it can create. For example, on how much it can constitute towards the GDP. All the centers must try to enhance the collaboration with the industry. Overall, we thank you for your valuable views and comments. Next, Dr. Stephen Wong. Thank you, Chairman. Secretary. I'm happy to see the work and results of the R&D centers. These centers have been around for around 20 years, and it is an appropriate time to conduct a review to help us position ourselves better as an international IT hub. The KPIs are currently the industry income and results income. Other than contributing towards the GDP, as there have been some unicorns around in the past few years, have any of the R&D centers supported our unicorns? If not, would there be more work done towards that end? So we should not only focus on the investment as our only KPI, we should also look into the outcome. To follow up on Kennedy's point, R&D centers are also pools of talent. If this could become a sort of revolving door, there would be more flexibility to go for more creativity in IT. Thirdly, I have received some complaints from the industry that some centers are competing with SMEs. Simply put, some work can be contracted out, and I think it's better to contract out instead of trying to compete against each other. Secretary, thank you for your questions. I agree with your views, including the views of other members. We are in discussion with the R&D centers on the next step forward. At the current moment, we hope to improve the centers and to incentivize the centers so that they could expand beyond their current horizons. Well, although the R&D centers are not government departments, they also have a responsibility to the community. Therefore, they should also provide job opportunities. These are all in our consideration. We have seen 10 odd unicorns in Hong Kong. That demonstrates our way forward in IT development, and I hope the 5 R&D centers will also contribute more in our high value added industries. We need to find a balance, however. And back to the IP problem, we do not object to the tech people in R&D centers to come up with their own ideas and then to start their new business. The R&D centers actually provide a support, and so they actually bear a responsibility to help companies and enterprises in their IT development, even though there is intellectual property involved. And through the transfer of technology, the R&D centers can also help enterprises to commercialize their research and development. So applied technology can be commercialized, and by working together with the sector, they can work hand in hand to come up with stronger outcomes. I hope there will be stronger collaboration between R&D centers and the SMEs. Next, Dr. Dennis Lam. Thank you. ASTRI, along with the 4 other centers, have been around for almost 18 to 20 years. Under the current development, we need to look into new positioning, and we need to draw references from other places. I've just visited a advanced high-tech institute in Shenzhen, and there are quite a few unique characteristics. First of all, they know exactly the demands and needs of the community and work towards that research. So there's actually a brain research center, and also in other technology. And on their team, there are Nobel Prize laureates, academics, and people of other expertise that come from all over the world. Through our exchanges, we could see how proud they are with their working model. So in the morning, they might be working on research upstairs, and in the afternoon, they would go downstairs to work in fund raising and company managing. And so people would own IP, and they work together with other companies. And you can see really outstanding results. There are also incubating funds within the company. Many companies have already become listed, the latest one being a medical one in Shanghai. So this works in MRI. We use 1.5D in Hong Kong now, and the better ones use 3D. But that medical center in Shanghai has already started using 5D. So we really must develop along with the times. We must try to keep up with international standards. I am sure this center in Shenzhen is one of the pioneers in the world. The Brain Research Center is actually a national appointed research center working together with Hong Kong UST. So this is perhaps a good time for us to reposition ourselves in our way forward. Thank you. Secretary, thank you. Dr. Lam, for your comments. The 5 R&D centers have been discussing on their new positioning. The APAS has been contributing to the automobile industry, and ASTRI taking up a more important role together with the research with the universities. And we also have Hong Kong RITA and LSCM setting itself as a center to support logistics, and NAMI working in nanotechnology. Some centers have been set up for quite some time, and we believe it is time to reconsider their roles. Other than the 5 R&D centers, we have been supporting centers in Science Park. There are 28 Inno Hong Kong research centers that are teams of expertise from universities. We hope that many of those can work in the R&D centers in the future. I'd like to supplement. We need to incentivize the researchers. The Shanghai Medical United Imaging Center actually has a value of over 200 billion Hong Kong dollars. So this is something we can start thinking about as well. Thank you. Next, Mr. Dennis Leung. Thank you. Well, I see the outcomes and results from the successes in the R&D centers, but more importantly, we need to nurture more talents or to attract more talents. I do not see from the report the increase or reduction in researchers and developers, and how many years have the personnel been working in the centers, because we need to know the numbers before we know how to attract local talents or overseas talents. There are 360 such researchers still in progress. How many projects see successful outcomes, and how many failures are there? Can you provide more information? We invest heavily in commercialization, but I do not see any information on the developing cycle and the delivery time on commercialization. How much time and resources do you spend on that before a product becomes commercialized? And this acts as an important KPI as well. We need more information to know whether we can become an international R&D center. We see from the tables some kind of a nano more modified, or a cement, or some kind of new technology. Can we adopt such technology and then share it out with the sector and schools? There are many arts related or arts oriented development that can also be participated by secondary students. Can we find ways to set up some sort of exhibition or pavilion so that secondary students can visit on a frequent basis and to really be immersed and become interested in this from a young age? Thank you for your questions. I'd like to defer to Ms. Rebecca Poon and Dr. Hong.
Right, about their research products or projects, they would take about 2 to 3 years. It would be hard for us to say whether they end in success or failure. From the conceptual stage to the stage of commercialization, it would take a pretty long time. So what we want the R&D centers to do is to see what direction they are taking these R&D projects, and they should be moving in the direction of the pain points in the industry, and there will be some milestones in the process. So in the days to come, perhaps in the next report, we'll try to weave this piece of information into the report for members' understanding. Now, members suggested that we should do more in the way of education and publicize the R&D outcomes more. This is eminently good idea. We'll certainly consider that. Mr. Yu? Mr. Daniel Yu. Yes, about the concrete. We have invented this version of concrete, and there is applicability on the road as backfill materials. We are working together with the Highways Department and other suppliers to apply these materials in the filling work. About the lightweight concrete, it is important that the latest or the most advanced construction method is MIC. Now, we mentioned in the video the old folks' home, and we are building a 20-story high old folks' home there. So we do have a different applicability in terms of our products. At the Science Park, we do have an exhibition on these materials, and members are welcome to pay a visit there. No supplement? Next, Mr. Robert Lee, please. My question is about S3. I've noticed that of the 6 major R&D projects, one of them is the fintech. This covers cybersecurity, blockchain, and deep learning, and so on. I've also noticed that in previous cooperation, it would be taking place with the banks and also the Hong Kong MA. So from the financial services point of view, would there be more opportunities to start collaboration with the securities industry and precious metal industry and so on, instead of just the banking sector? I know that there is an investment platform that is available. Will this be broadened in scope so that more sectors will be able to take part? Secretary. I defer to Mr. Dennis Yip, or Dr. Yip. Yes, we do cooperate with the banking sector in the fintech. We've also started a learning process that without getting the data, we will be able to conduct the analysis. We do cooperate with OpenRise, Fedamigo, Lalamove. We do get hold of the data for analytics. Now, the data will not be just used by the banks. All the other platforms will also be able to use this data. And we are also collaborating with the insurance sector. We hope that the fintech utilization will not be restricted to the banks. We hope that the insurance sector and also the data sector will also be using this fintech. No supplement? Thank you. Right, that's all the time we have for this item. Thank you very much, Professor, and your team. The next item is World Trade Organization key outcomes of the 20th Ministerial Conference. Shall we invite the officials into the chamber, please? With us for this item, Ms. Maggie Wong, Director General of the Trade and Industry, Mr. Francis Ho, Deputy Director General, Multilateral Trade, Regional Cooperation and Bilateral Trade, Ms. Libera Cheng, Assistant Director General, and Mr. Patrick Lai, Assistant Director of AFCD. We've all run a little bit from the previous item. I'd like to exercise my executive authority to extend the meeting by 15 minutes. So members who wish to speak, please press the button. I hand you over to Ms. Wong, Director General. As a free and open economic entity, we've always been in support of open trade system. And under the Basic Law, we are part of the WTO to take forward the benefits. The MC12 was just held in June, and this is a very fruitful meeting. We have the Geneva package, and the paper has set out all the details. Perhaps I highlighted some of them for members' attention. The first one is agreement on fisheries subsidies. This is the first multilateral agreement since 2013, and this is to curtail harmful fisheries subsidies to help ensure the contribute to illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing, and subsidies for fishing regarding overfished stock, and also subsidies for fishing on the unregulated high seas. We've been liaising with the trade, and they're all in support of the government's work here. This agreement will not have any bearing on the trade, and this will not affect all the support and subsidies for the fisher folk. The government is making preparation for the implementation, and we will be making adjustment to the arrangement to make sure that we are in compliance with the agreement. It is expected that by the end of 2023, we will be able to implement all the details. Second, work program on electronic commerce. The WTO members agreed to reinvigorate the work in this area and to maintain the current practice of not imposing customs duties on electronic transmissions until MC13. This will make sure that we can maintain a stable environment to foster the development of e-commerce. And we hope that this moratorium will be able to meet a permanent solution. Third, WTO response package to emergencies. This is a plurilateral agreement, and this is taking up 92% of the world trade services. We have arrangement regarding licenses and qualification, and this will not create any trade barrier, and we will try to lower the tariff. And there will be a requirement to provide a transparent procedure for application of licenses. In Hong Kong, we have given the undertaking that for the 30 or so service industries that they will be able to measure up to the requirements, and we can extend this to 6 other sectors to do with the environment. With the implementation of these, when we provide the services, there will be greater transparency and predictability in terms of the procedures. As I said, as a highly liberalized economic entity, we do have a high degree of transparency. We are on the right side of the requirements. So what remains to do is to make some amendments to tie in with the requirements. By December, we will be handing or submitting these to the WTO for implementation. There are other outcomes arising from MC12, and we have the arrangement to remove the liability regarding COVID-19 to expand the vaccine production capability to protect the other countries. There is also this arrangement to enhance the function of the WTO. We're all in support of this. We hope that we will be able to reinvigorate and the negotiating function and also the well-functioning dispute settlement system, and we are prepared to discuss with the members to achieve these targets. All in all, Mr. Chairman, Hong Kong is a more external-oriented economic entity. We believe that a plurilateral trade system will provide greater transparency, predictability to promote the development of global trade. We subscribe to the outcome, and we will, in the days to come, cooperate with the WTO members to take forward subjects for which the further discussions will have to take place, and we will participate constructively in other WTO negotiations and discussions. We are prepared to take members' questions and listen to members' views. All right, 5 minutes for each member. And Mr. Stephen Ho, please. Chairman. I must commend the AFCD for approaching the fisher folk at the early stage. I remember there have been 2 meetings, each 1 month apart, and we have fully reflected our concerns and misgivings. And in the days to come, we'll have to implement all these details and see what can be done and what cannot be done. I'd like to state my misgivings. Now, regarding this FSA, there will be no subsidies for illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing regarding an overfished stock, and for fishing on the unregulated high seas. So the endangered species cannot be caught. But the wording seemed to be really generalized, like unregulated fishing. What do you mean by illegal fishing? I don't think there is a clear enough definition there. And it's not clear what sort of subsidies they are talking about. I hope that the government will make this sufficiently clear. There is no subsidies per se, no cash subsidy, although there is support. Like there is the low interest loan for the fisher folk, not lower than 2.5%. The only time it was lower than 2.5 was the ban on trawling, and there was 1% interest rate loan. In this exercise, this has been regarded as a kind of subsidy for illegal fishing. The fisher folk will not be able to get the loan, and there will be financial burden on the fishermen. Now, certainly, illegal fishing is against the law. In some cases, the illegality doesn't arise from the fisher folk, like under Cap 171, the Fisheries Protection Ordinance. You have to have all the documentation before you get the license. It would be hard for you to get all the documentation. Maybe I have 100 or 200 vessels that cannot be given the license because, like the vessel survey will only take place every 3 months, and there would be a 3-month window whereby they will have to carry on fishing for livelihood purposes. So I'd like to the administration to tell us about the definition of illegal fishing. If they don't have sufficient documentation, would that be regarded as illegal fishing? Like during COVID, we don't have sufficient surveys. Well, over half of the fleet have already gone beyond the required period, and that the licenses may be dubious now. Of course, we can resolve this by legislation, but still, we're under a lot of pressure.
核嘅公海
Secondly, unregulated high seas. So for those Hong Kong companies that would like to fish out of Hong Kong territory, they're not very clear of the definition of unregulated high seas. But there are areas which are not regulated by any jurisdiction. So can there be a clearer definition on which parts are unregulated? And can you actually give us, the AFCD, give a checklist to fishermen on what kind of activities are considered as illegal activities? Because some activities might be ongoing as it is part of our culture, but we may not be clear of that. Director, we thank the views from the sector, and by agreeing to the FSA is in our interest. Once this is implemented, then we need to know about the details. Well, originally, it is a set of rules to prohibit unregulated fishing and illegal fishing. But as to the details, I would like to defer to Mr. Lai to address your questions. I may need to spend some time to address this question. On the 3 questions, I would like to supplement that before I address these questions. You asked about the definition of the subsidy. In Hong Kong, we do not have cash subsidies for our fishermen. The subsidies we provide at this moment are development funds, such as the Fisheries subsidies and a loan subsidy and a continuing or sustainable development fund. These may not be a direct cash subsidy, but could be considered as a fishery subsidy under the FSA. What do we mean by illegal fishing? It is clear that under Hong Kong law, under Cap 171, it regulates the operation of fishing in Hong Kong, prohibiting unregulated fishing. WTO has left it to members to think of how to implement the agreement. There are some general concepts, such as looking at the seriousness of the contravention and potential future breaches. The example you gave just now on illegal trashing Well, I just want to supplement that. Let's say when the license from the AFCD has expired and I didn't know. However, when the Marine Department investigated while I was at sea, I do not have a valid license. So this is not a question about garbage. It's on expired licenses because it happens quite frequently. Well, first of all, we would look at whether there are any contraventions to fishing. It will depend on the individual situation and the circumstances at that moment. I can't cut it across the board right now, but mainly we would look at the seriousness of the offense before we suspend any subsidies. On location, you provided us with 3 scenarios. One is fishing on unregulated seas. I can say at this moment that some seas that are regulated by other jurisdictions are considered regulated. Only open seas not under regulation will be considered as unregulated seas, and I'm sure that it wouldn't affect the operation in Hong Kong. Mr. Ho has given some examples in which we can follow up with local regulations to see what would fall under a breach of the agreement. And the next step will be discussing with the local fisheries trade. So that when the FSA comes into effect, they would not be affected. Or I want to bring out the issue of illegal and unregulated fishing, because very often it is due to lack of support from the government, such as expired licenses. Well, if this kind of behavior contravenes the WTO's agreement, then you must try to lower such risk. I hope you can work with the Marine Department and the AFCD in continuing with this work. Or do you have another question? Oh, yes, I'll wait for my second round. All right, I'll give the floor to Mr. Dennis Leung then. Thank you. What will affect local fisheries trade in your discussion with the WTO? And what were some of the items that you have to negotiate through your discussions? When the FSA comes into effect, adjustments and amendments will be made. Do you have a timetable to converse with the local trade so that these could be ironed out before the agreement comes into effect? Director, the agreement mainly targets subsidy on illegal and unregulated fishing, overfishing, and fishing on unregulated seas. The Marine Department has assessed the mode of operation and found that we are mainly able to fulfill the regulations. But once this comes into effect, the AFCD will just need to adopt these terms to demonstrate that we have participated and agreed to the negotiations. The AFCD will lay out the details to the trade later on. Perhaps I can defer to Mr. Lai for follow-up. Thank you. We continue to look at the updates and see how the local fisheries trade will be affected. And of course, we will notify the trade in a timely manner. There are three main areas in which contravention will lead to termination of subsidies. We would look into illegal, unreported, and regulated fishing, IUU, to ensure that boats or any when the trade is not following the regulations, they would not be able to receive any subsidies. We just need to add in regulations to ensure that we can implement these. And this is not anything new. We also have arrangements currently for that. We're just trying to make it more clear. Any follow-up? So after adjustments were made, would there be an empty window period in which the interest of the fishermen will be affected? Mr. Lai, thank you. It is expected that after communication with the trade, we will be able to implement and accept the FSA by the end of next year. There is an administrative measure in place that we can suspend loans or subsidies in view of illegal fishing activities. Once we accept the FSA, then it becomes part of the WTO, and there will not be an empty window period because we can still handle it as we have been doing so, as in a usual manner. I want to supplement that the WTO can only make this effective when 2/3 of the members have agreed to that. So we'll have to wait till 2/3 of the members have agreed before it can come into force. Second round, Mr. Stephen Ho. Thank you. Well, you estimate that Hong Kong, China can implement and accept the FSA by end 2023, and this is set out in the paper. However, all the loans or the local loans are not part of subsidies. So in theory, they are not any subsidies. I just want to know what kind of activities would be considered illegal, which can lead to a suspension of funding. If any fishermen, due to this, will be made to return the loan immediately, would have a huge impact on the fishermen. So I hope you would go back and ensure that this wouldn't happen. I don't think we should actually see such conflict. And now I have a more general question. Well, we're talking about the WTO. Recently, President Xi has talked about multilateral views and initiatives, but we see sanctions by Western countries or taxes imposed that could be seen as a threat. I'm not sure whether any of you have actually attended the negotiations in person. How was the ambience? And if that happens, what kind of measures will we adopt to ensure that Hong Kong will not be affected economically? Because here you also talk about e-commerce. I'm not very familiar with that. Would that also have an impact on transaction issues? Because there are Russian sanctions, so Russian companies cannot use SWIFT. So would that happen to us as well?
會有影響㗎嘛？
Yes, about the transaction, basically, yes. Please. Thank you very much for the question, Mr. Ho. Here in Hong Kong, we have been following a free and open economic system, and the WTO is a platform to promote multilateral agreement, and this is an effective organization. Now, for this agreement, this is a new agreement since 2013, and the member states are fulfilling their function to guard against the hegemony and unilateralism, and this is something that should not happen in a multilateral trade system. So we have achieved some tangible results after so many years, and Hong Kong took part as part of the mainland China, and we're trying to minimize multilateralism and trade barriers, and we are promoting a rules-based multilateral trading system. This is the position that we would steadfastly hold on to as part of the WTO work. Now, the e-commerce is also an important area. We can see how important it is. So we will try to take part in this negotiation over the moratorium. We hope that at the next ministerial conference, there will be further efforts to impose the moratorium on the tariff. And so we will be taking these forward on the basis of our policies. Mr. Ho. I mentioned the e-commerce. Of course, we embrace multilateralism, but there are some member states that would be imposing the tariff. What are we going to do? We don't have to answer my question. Just take a look at this because it's something for the long term. Any further questions on this item? If not, so much for this item. Thank you very much, officials. Let's move on to item 6. Any other business? We don't have any AOB items. Meeting is now adjourned. Thank you all very much.